Welcome back to Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey, episode 16. This is our MCU deep dive podcast that can be found at entertherealworld.com, and a URL I totally know. Episode 16 will be covering Spider-Man Homecoming. I am Matt Waters, the latter half of Ben and Matt. I am joined by the man in the chair, Ben Phillips. Ben, how are you?
I'm good. I've got many screens. Many screens. We did this bit already.
It's your fault. Your low-tech setup is destroying this episode.
It wasn't even that screwed it up.
Yeah, so originally our Spider-Man episode was going to be off schedule. It was going to be short because Mike Thomas and I covered Spider-Man Homecoming in our 3-part podcast, Big Spideas. So I was like, I don't need to say anything again. I'll just let Ben talk. We'll put it out outside of the schedule. And when I was working out the schedule, I was like, okay, if we do that, we start this date. But then as we've approached this, I got more and more excited to watch it again and to apply our little show formula. And, there's more information available, the capacity to rewind and pause so you get quotes right, all that sort of stuff. So I was like, let's make it a full episode. But we can't move the schedule because it's been timed perfectly, except Marvel fucked us on that one. Never mind though. So yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming. For me, this is just joyous. If you've listened to me on this or any other podcast, you will know I am an obnoxious Spider-Man fan. I will attempt to reel it in a little bit, but I make no apologies. This is a character that is so near and dear to me. I have seen 5 films that don't get it right. I felt like I was screaming into an echo chamber about the Raimi trilogy and saying, guys, no guys, they're not good. It's just you were like 12 when they came out, so you think they are. So for me, this was like finally the Spider-Man film for me. I think they completely nail it. I think they nail Spider-Man himself. I love every decision they made. I think for me this might be stealthily the best cast in a Marvel film. We'll see what happens with Sony and their little Spideyverse that will begin with Venom and incorporate Tom Holland and Silver and Black is coming and all this stuff. But for now we have, for me, a joyous film in Spider-Man Homecoming. I know you aren't quite as through the roof with it as I am, but who could be?
Yeah, we are at a point now where this is the 6th Spider-Man movie in 16 years. We've had a lot of Spider-Man. We've had 3 Spider-Man. There's been so many cartoons based on this character that it's hard to do something original, and I think this movie does do something original in terms of the movies. This is the only high school movie we really get. They tried in Amazing Spider-Man, and they do a little bit in the first Spider-Man movie, but both of those franchises basically just go, the moment after the movie's done, it's like, right, we're out of high school, not doing that anymore.
And it's also just such a token effort. It's here are your 2 scenes in high school where everyone is 30 years old. And I love the title. Obviously it right away shows their hand in that this is very much a high school story, and it also has that double meaning of Spider-Man is coming back to the MCU, so I will have a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff to go over, obviously. They claim it's a coincidence that word homecoming was one of Bucky's trigger words in Civil War. So released July 7th, 2017, still weirds me out, we're doing movies this recent. The film to come out since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is Wonder Woman, the surprise hit of the year. No one saw that coming, DC writing the ship, and then immediately not writing it. That took Thor Ragnarok's slot, which in turn took Black Panther's slot, which pushed Black Panther into early this year. So they literally moved heaven and earth to incorporate Spider-Man into Phase 3 when he wasn't originally part of it.
And they did cancel a movie as well.
Did they?
Yeah, Inhumans got cancelled.
Of course. Well, for the best. It's 133 minutes long, which is shorter than Spider-Man 3 and both Amazing Spider-Man films. Budget of $175 million, which is shockingly low. If the rumours are true and Robert Downey Jr. costs a flat $50 million, then a large portion of this film is going to pay one person, and the cast is huge. Admittedly, a lot of them are very young, and you don't have to pay young actors very much. Rumours out there about Daisy Ridley and John Boyega about Star Wars and how little they were making compared to the adults, but still, it seems crazy to me given how big the cast is, and while a lot of them are kids, there are also a lot of adult actors, there's a lot of cameos, as a massive amount of visual effects, so that this was made of $175 million is a bit crazy to me. I wonder if maybe, because this is technically financed by Sony, I wonder if Robert Downey Jr.'s services were paid for separately by Marvel, and that isn't factored into the budget, but who knows.
I mean, it's one of those things where, because obviously this is an additional movie as well, so, do we actually know how much Downey got paid? Is that $50 million figure?
I don't know. I mean, that is what is out there, that every appearance is $50 million plus ticket sales, but I don't know if he gets that for this movie because it's financed by Sony.
Obviously, he extended his contract with Civil War, the one feature film, and then this one is again a separate deal. So it's whether or not
wonder
more
if
for this
he
one.
did them the solid and only asked for 30 million or 20, still an obscene amount.
We're also in this weird point in the MCU where I feel all three of the movies that could have come out last year could have hit $1 billion, and the fact that none of them did is also a little weird.
I said it with Guardians, I'll say it with this one. 880 million, so pretty close. Second highest for any Spider-Man film. But I am pretty shocked this didn't get $1 billion, and I jokingly said that maybe this and Guardians coming out close together cannibalized each other's ticket sales, but that could be a possibility, I don't know.
I mean, and the fact you have Wonder Woman as well doing that 800 number as well kind of adds on to this, and it's weird that when you were discussing these movies, Batman v Superman hitting the 800 million mark is a massive disappointment, whereas I feel Guardians, this, Wonder Woman and Thor Ragnarok all getting in the mid-800s is a massive success, especially when you look at what the previous movies in those franchises did. Yeah. Or the best previous examples in this franchise is all hit, and this is a huge year for superhero movies, but nothing obviously we haven't seen anything quite as record breaking as we have Black Panther this year. Last year was massive, but this year's already had one juggernaut. There's going to be at least a second juggernaut out in a few weeks. It's a weirdly different year this year where we're going from massive highs to probably the comparative low of Ant-Man Wasp to last year where everything was at a level.
So directed by John Watts, who's made such tremendous films, motion pictures as Clown and Cop Car.
Cop Car's great.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go then. Written by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, who did Horrible Bosses, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. They came up with the premise. A lot of the humour is from them, the basic story structure. John Watts and his writing partner Christopher Ford, who helped him with the two aforementioned films, and also wrote Robot and Frank. When Watts got the director job, he came in, and the two of them altered the structure of the story, adjusted it to be more in line with what he had, and then they brought in Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, who both have history with Community, which is an ongoing theme with this. They wrote for American Dad, Lego Batman. McKenna did the jokes for Winter Soldier. Summers worked on Happy Endings and Drawn Together. So they came in during filming to make adjustments to the script, which is a common practice, that it's helpful to have someone there making rewrites based on how scenes are actually turning out. And Eric Pearson is uncredited, but did some writing on this. He is part of the Marvel Writers Program, and he did Agent Carter and some of the other... Sorry, as in the one-shot version of Agent Carter, and some of the other one-shots. I feel he's basically their kind of trusted, let's Marvel it up a notch, MCU series Bible type person, because he does keep cropping up here. So there's a lot of writers involved. Obviously, as we've said, there have been many Spider-Man films, all made by Sony. They had been planning a whole Spider-Verse to mirror the MCU, and they used Amazing Spider-Man 2 to set up Sinister Six, and a third Amazing Spider-Man film was planned to come out in 2016, and a fourth for 2018. They wanted films with Black Cat, they wanted Venom, they even were talking about doing Spider-Man 2099, so they were all in. Andrew Garfield and Mark Webb both seemed a little bit disinterested in doing a lot of these films, and there were the reports that went around that some of the Sony higher-ups did not like Andrew Garfield. I think he stood up for himself quite a lot on set, and he sort of didn't want to do some of the promotion and all this. We then got the 2014 email hack of Sony emails, which revealed that Sony had approached Sam Raimi to come back and do a new trilogy. It also revealed talks between Marvel and Sony that I believe were instigated by Marvel to get Spider-Man back into the MCU. Both of these leaked conversations fell through, but after Sony had rejected the Marvel pitch, they changed their tune, allegedly due to pressures from Sony Japan, because they were like, look, these films aren't doing us anything, just do the deal with Marvel, we'll probably make more money out of it. So that is what they did. Sony finance and distribute, Marvel have creative control, although allegedly Sony can ultimately say no to anything. They have final say, but they are trusting in Marvel's creative voice for what to do with it, and Sony get to keep full control of other Spider-Man characters, hence this Venom movie coming out at the end of the year with Tom Hardy that is... I can't fathom what it's going to be like.
It's like an R-rated Spider-Man related movie, which may or may not feature Tom Holland in some role, and I can't believe that Sony are allowed to do it, to be honest.
They can do what they want. Because the other thing about this that scared me that I didn't know, this deal can be cancelled by either side at any time. I would imagine a film that's already actively well into development, i.e. Infinity War, would still come out, but theoretically, 1 week before the release of Infinity War, Sony could go, nah, fuck you.
Wasn't there the rumour that Sony were going to neg out on it at the end of 3 movies, and like they were just going to do this to build up their corner of the franchise, and then...
I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's smart, because the enthusiasm for a Spider-Verse bridging off the Amazing Spider-Man films, that didn't go down well. So, you know, if they want to piggyback on some of the MCU popularity and then use that as a backdoor into their own thing, more power to them. But if we get these good Spider-Man films in the meantime and we get him in Avengers, fine.
It's an interesting part where, like, you can see the building blocks of Phase 3 that, like, oh, the first movie in this is going to introduce Black Panther, and then the second movie is Doctor Strange, and you can see them trying to build up new central characters through it. And like Doctor Strange, I feel like was their great big hope because he's the one that got the solo movie first, and then obviously they moved heaven and earth to get Spider-Man into the slot they got it into. But I feel like they can't build too much around Spider-Man.
Yeah. And I don't think they should either, because, I mean, we've talked about this. While he's obviously going to be in Infinity War, his history as a character is kind of as a solo agent who sometimes helps them out. I wouldn't want him to appear in too much of the rest of the MCU. It's just nice that it can happen.
And it's good that Marvel got Black Panther to be as big as it is, because I feel like that's now something they can build something from, whereas Spider-Man is built on sand, pretty much. And
Sony need them more than they need Sony, I think, is why there is an incentive to keep this deal in place for the foreseeable. If Venom comes out and bombs, if Silver and Black doesn't come together, then maybe they don't pull out. But for now, that very well could happen.
I could also see a world in which Tom Holland gets told, oh no, we're leaving the MCU, and he's just like, well, then I'm leaving too. And what are they going to do there? Like, the whole reason is to have a Spider-Man that you can parlay off of. And if he goes, well, I've done 3 movies and a Captain America movie and 2 Infinity War movies.
That's his contract, I believe.
What do I need this franchise for now? I've done my Spider-Man role. I don't need to be him for life. It feels weird that they would think about doing that. Although then I guess they could do a Miles Morales movie.
Indeed. Some talk of that surely to come. So Marvel have merchandising rights. They paid $175 million to get that. That's a steal, in my opinion. They make a small payment for each sequel to this movie to keep that contract. But yeah, they have all that. Sony also pay Marvel a producer's fee, but Kevin Feige did this movie for freezies, which is nice. He cares about Spider-Man, so he did this for free. All of this, of course, led to the cancellation of Amazing Spider-Man 3, despite Amy Pascal fighting for Andrew Garfield to be kept, because Marvel insisted on going younger. Drew Goddard, who had been working on Sinister Six, was rumoured to write and direct this, but he basically said, I've been completely invested in Sinister Six for a year, I can't get my headspace out of that, and I have no idea for you, I'm sorry. So he passed. Kevin Feige made it very clear up front it wasn't going to be an origin movie. They'd had 2 tellings of this in a decade, of this origin story, with Uncle Ben getting shot and him getting bit by the spider and all of this. They also stressed it was going to be a high school movie, obviously. They had various young actors in to test to play Spider-Man in Civil War, as I mentioned in that episode, while the studios were still looking for a director. Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley, who would, of course, eventually become the writers, were among the frontrunners to direct. But then on June 23rd, 2015, John Watts and Tom Holland were announced. So John Watts got to read the Civil War script. He was present during filming to make sure they were on the same page. Gave some input about the scenes in Peter's bedroom, that kind of stuff. They were considering early on having Nick Fury be his little guest mentor, his guest from the MCU, before Robert Downey Jr. was announced in April 2016. J.K. Simmons expressed interest in returning. Fingers crossed his DC EU involvement doesn't stop that from happening, because Lawrence Fishburne has crossed over, of course, seen the light. But from what I've heard, those talks are dead for now, but I think there is heavy fan interest in seeing JK return down the line.
I want JK as J. Jonah Jameson, even if it's just like a scene where Peter applies a newspaper.
I mean, we saw in the Amazing films, Peter gets an email from him. So, like, they still have not dared recast. And I would say either don't do him or have it be JK, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, like, it's weird that, like, J.K. Simmons has become a bigger actor since those movies. And so, like, you've got someone who did it as, like, a fun little side bit who's gone on to win an Oscar and all these other little tiny roles that he does. But he's just become so ubiquitous now that, like, there's no one that you can imagine replacing him. And he's an even bigger name now. So having him in there is even a bigger draw for people, even if it is just fan service, really.
I would say if he wants to do it, and the fans overwhelmingly want to do it, then I would keep it for him.
This isn't universe-breaking stuff either. Like, no. It's just...
All right, so that's your little development. So, Ben, why don't you give us, the heavily abridged origins of Spider-Man in the comic, etc., and maybe talk about our villain for this movie as well.
So, Spider-Man is a character created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, co-creators of Doctor Strange. Yeah, he debuted in Amazing Fantasy number 15, one of the very, like, most iconic covers of all time. I think it's like 12 pages worth of story. It does the basis of the entirety of Spider-Man. I mean, there are 2 movies that are based on the 15 pages of this comic, pretty much. Boy gets bitten by a spider, tries to earn some money. Uncle gets shot by a thief that he lets go away, and then he confronts him in a warehouse. Basically got the entire crux of Spider-Man's character there. If you want a masterclass in how to tell a story quickly and efficiently, this issue is incredible. It's very 1960s written, so, like, there's a lot going on that's in the panel, and then the panel is literally just being explained to you in words. But like,
speech bubbles were pretty out of control in the 60s, weren't they?
Yes, they were. I think they literally did this one issue and then they spun him off into his own series. Amazing Spider-Man number 1 came out in 1963. The villain of that issue was Chameleon, who has not been adapted into comic books. The second issue came out, or adapted into movies even. The second issue came out, and it featured the Vulture, or Adrian Toomes, who is the villain we get here. This is the first time that Vulture has appeared in any kind of movie franchise. There were rumours that Spider-Man 4 from Sam Raimi was going to be featuring the Vulture, wasn't there?
John Malkovich.
John Malkovich is the Vulture, yes. Finally, after, almost 10 years worth of teasing that they were going to do this, we get the Vulture. He is an ex-electronics engineer who basically managed to develop a flight suit, but he had a falling out with his business partner, and, basically decided to become a thief, to fly around and steal things. There's other bits, like there's a brief period in the history where he becomes a vampire, where he sucks the youth out of people and becomes young. It's all very dumb, but the basic crux of the character of man develops flight suit and then steals things is what you need to know. He's never has been one of, like, Spider-Man's key villains. He's not Green Goblin, he's not Venom, he's not Dr. Octopus.
But in their desire to avoid these ones that have been done before, I think it's a good one to go for.
And it's one of those ones, and I think, like, to tease where this movie, what we're going to say about this movie is it's a character that doesn't have a lot of fleshing out. It's one of those characters where there have been 4 different versions of the character in the comic books. So there's not a lot there, so there's a lot that you can kind of twist around and make it way more interesting when you're adapting it into a film.
Which they do.
So that is a very, very abridged version of Spider-Man. You guys have discussed Spider-Man comic books in big Spiders, so I'm not going to encroach on that too much. This movie doesn't need to adapt Spider-Man's origins. We all know he got bitten by a spider. They do one line in this movie about him being bitten by a spider. We get one line referencing that Aunt May's had a tough year in relation to Uncle Ben, but we don't actually get a name Uncle Ben. We don't actually get at any point in this movie, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, they are steering clear of the big tropes of the Spider-Man origin. I have heard some, like, people saying, like, oh, what if they bring back the dead characters in Infinity War and they just cast someone Uncle Ben? And it's just like, no, I don't want, like, that to be the reveal of Uncle Ben. Is Peter Parker breaking down in tears to see the uncle and stuff like that.
They've talked about how they wanted to avoid the tragedy of Spider-Man, and obviously there is some tragedy to be done, but it's been done a lot. And they wanted to harness instead the joy of this character, which has been mostly lacking in those 5 films. A few minutes here and there where it's fun, but it's a lot of melancholy, it's a lot of brooding, it's a lot of, like, the pain, the torture, the sacrifice. And they just wanted to just focus in on, he's a kid, he's in high school, he struggles, he has real problems, but he's generally upbeat. And I think all of that, combined with the not wanting to do the origin story again, is all very wise.
It's basically like they're doing the Parker luck, where things go badly, but he always looks on the bright side of things. He's got a good moral compass instilled in him by these people, and even though he's had tragedy in his life, that moral compass is what makes him want to be a better person, and they completely nailed that part of the character in this movie.
Yeah. Okay, so Our film begins in 2012 in some minor timeline breaking.
I'm genuinely surprised they didn't change that in the Blu-ray.
So yeah, Adrian Toomes is the leader of a little salvage crew, very blue collar. They are cleaning up the mess left behind in the incident / the Battle of New York, depending on what your source material is in the MCU. But his crew are replaced by damage control. And the crew are left with kind of fucked, basically. And they spend the next 8 years quietly selling stolen alien tech, building a tiny little underground empire. So, damage control, nice little nod to a thing from the comics. I think all of this stuff at the beginning, it continues their efforts to ground what happened in the Avengers, make it seem serious. It wasn't just a bombastic third act in a huge summer blockbuster movie. This keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. It keeps coming up. And we keep seeing the seriousness of it, that it was a big fucking deal. That and Sokovia, like both of them, they're referenced so much and they're both Avengers movies, so it's not just a gimmick that it's a team up, like within the universe it means something. And I think doing stuff like this and starting with ground level dudes having to, these giant space whales didn't just disappear, someone had to move them, these buildings had to get repaired, and I think starting here is a really nice little touch.
Phase 3 is all about making this universe feel like it's got history. Yep. Beforehand we've had little throwaway references and stuff like that, but like between what this movie does, what Civil War does, like there's a texture to this world, and yes, it does make it a bit more difficult for people to come in. Obviously everyone saw Avengers, but there are probably still people out there that haven't seen Avengers that went to see this movie, and that colouring might be confusing, but I feel like they get away with it. It's just giant alien, it has tech.
And they start with the little the drawing that presumably his child did, whose identity will be revealed later. I read it that way. It could have just been a picture just on the floor. But yeah, they have that little crude drawing of the Avengers, and then you look at the wreckage, so you could probably just piece that together. So we have Michael Keaton as the Vulture, who is never actually called that in the film. Well, I think someone said something about the Vulture guy, but yeah, he generally goes by Adrian Toomes. He initially dropped out due to having to make The Founder, but the production on that film changed, so he signed right up. Mark Hamill wanted in during the time when he was out. I'm glad that he got back in. Gary Oldman was considered again. They really are desperate to put that man in an MCU film.
I do love Michael Keaton's history of comic book movies. Going from Batman to playing a character called Birdman to the Vulture. It's a great little career trajectory. Oh god, Michael Keaton's so good.
He is. I love this blue collar vibe for him. He's not a scientist that got wronged. He's not a tech guy. He's not a soldier. He's not a Nazi. He's just a dude. He's just an everyman. And that beat runs straight through this movie, straight through this character. And it's an example of why the excuse of, well, we have to give more screen time to the hero and stuff, we didn't have time to develop the character, doesn't fly. Because this dude isn't in this film any more than a lot of the bad villains. But he is an infinitely better character, and you get it from the word go right until...
Well, it's because you get that bit where, like, most of these movies do open up with the first scene of them, but the first scene in so many of these movies is the villain being villainous. Think back to Captain America, it's Red Skull being a literal Nazi and murdering someone, and you think back to Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's...
Ronan murdering someone.
Ronan, and then you get this movie, which is man trying to make a living, gets told that he can't make a living how he wants to, so he takes an opportune moment to do something. And like the scenes are the same length, but instead of it being this is what our villain does and this is why he's villainous, this is how this character exists and this is why he turns to a life of crime that you are sympathetic for.
He's getting fucked by the government, he's getting fucked by Tony Stark, and he will have his speech later on about like the big man screwing us over and everything. And he talks about, I've spent all this money, like I've hired this crew, what are they going to do? And you're with him when he punches that guy from Damage Control in the face. You can see why they did what they did. I just love it. Like generally throughout this, he never really makes a serious attempt to injure a person. He, when Peter gets in his way, he goes for him and he makes no bones. I will be fine with killing you. But he's not just going out there attacking randoms. I like that when a member of his crew talks about being the Shocker. He's like, what is this pro wrestling? Like, he's not into the whole villainy aspect. He's not trying to draw attention from the Avengers. Like, this operation is run very small. He gets really angry at the Shocker for drawing some attention to himself. He keeps refusing this big job that he eventually reluctantly takes. Generally, he's more vicious than he is evil. I like the way they handle him generally. Like, whenever he is on screen with his glider and everything, there's just a sort of brutal physicality to him. Like, it's dangerous. And sort of like you fear for Peter, who is this young kid, fighting this guy that is shockingly violent, I think, at times. When this first shocker gives him the dressing down or whatever, he kills him by accident. Like, he tries to use a completely different gun on him and it instead vaporizes him. But then he's okay with it. So it's like the right level of evil.
It's a decent comedic beat. Like, it shows you that it goes dark. Like, his question afterwards isn't, oh God, I didn't mean to kill him. It's, oh, that wasn't the weapon that I meant to pick up.
It's not like, oh God, but it's also not like, whoa.
Exactly.
Yeah. In a movie with an enormous cast, we're not going to have time to stop off every time these characters have huge moments, but his little crew, he has Michael Chernus as the Tinkerer, Logan Marshall Green as Shocker 1, and Bokeem Woodbine as Shocker 2, because obviously Logan Marshall Green super dies, and Bokeem Woodbine picks up the gauntlet. I like the subtle touch with the insulation sleeve for this, like, Shocker gauntlet that gives the little nod to the comic look for the character. I think they're both good fits for it. I'm glad that, we're going to persevere for Bokeem Woodbine, who is of course excellent in Fargo. But Logan Marshall Green it's a good casting for a dirtbag,
Yeah, like I think all of the little villainous roles in this movie are so well cast, and yes. It's crazy that you think on all these other Spider-Man movies, and they always kind of went for, I mean, maybe less so the Raimi trilogy, but like definitely the Amazing series, they went for relatively big names for all the villains, whereas this movie, like, you get these 4 characters here. Michael Keaton's the only like big name out of all of them, and then like all the other kind of like little set piece roles, they're all like television level actors who are coming in and just doing good work, because that's exactly who you want to be casting for this kind of thing. And it means they're going to be available if they ever want to do a Sinister Six movie, because they're not going to have as much going on in their schedules, and we just get 4 or 5 like key Spider-Man villains done in this movie straight away, and they're all people who I want to see more of, which is like the best thing about it. Is this is the first time it feels like we've got a rogues gallery.
That's the thing. Batman has the rogues gallery, but for a lot of people, number 2 is Spider-Man.
Batman has a top level that you just can't mess with, whereas Spider-Man has depth, and they're all characters that have interacted with lots and lots of other characters, so some of them feel less like they're indebted to Spider-Man.
Yeah. I think a lot of the characters that we're seeing in films, they have like one iconic villain maybe, and then it's really thin after that, whereas Spider-Man has that depth to go to. And I also, talk about how many of them are in this film. I generally think of Spider-Man fighting many villains at once, as opposed to just hero versus villain, this is our whole story, and maybe you'll get one secondary villain and maybe a tertiary, but this has like 6 different villains in it, which is nice. I think it goes well with the character. Right, so, we move from this little scene to a home movie that Peter Parker has edited together from his experiences in Germany for Civil War. After that, he returns to high school. He frequently texts Happy Hogan about when his next mission is going to be for Tony Stark, while going out on patrol as Spider-Man in the local neighborhood. One night, he stops a bank robbery that uses some alien tech. Okay, so there's going to be a lot to discuss between this and the next plot point, so strap in. So Robert Downey Jr. is here as Tony Stark. Tom Holland was surprised they got him, because he was like, oh, that'd be great. And then like 2 days later, they're like, yeah, we asked him, he said yes. I was like, oh, good.
I love how innocent Tom Holland is in this situation. Right? Yes. It's just like, he's just happy to be there.
Yep. Both the character and the actor. John Francis Daley talks about writing Robert Downey Jr. here as kind of Ethan Hawke's character in Boyhood, the father there. I don't know how apt that is, but yeah, he's playing this sort of semi-reluctant mentor as the ongoing maturity of Tony Stark in the MCU. This is our latest chapter, and it will go through ups and downs. The best stuff with him is coming later, but I do like this little initial scene in the back of the car where like Tom Holland is totally holding his own while having to have this scene with Robert Downey Jr. And of course the big scene they did in the trailer was for this section is when he leans over to open the door, and Peter thinks he's going for a hug, and it's like, nope. Bye-bye. Bye now. Keep the suit.
Okay, I am intrigued. Based on the timeline of Civil War, where do you think this scene takes place? Is this in between the fight at the airport and then Tony
having the change of heart and going to the raft? Yes, I think it is.
You think it's then? You don't? So you think it's
maybe
massive fight with Captain America?
I think he goes for the weekend, doesn't he? Peter's involvement in that Civil War scene is literally for the weekend. Although Tony had a black eye coming out of that, which is absent. So
yeah, that's what I'm asking is like, how soon after this is this? Because if it's immediately afterwards, Tony's very, very chipper for what's just happened to him at the end of Civil War.
I don't know. Maybe Peter, after his little scene of Civil War, goes back to the hotel for a while, and then Tony eventually brings him home. Maybe a week later. I don't know. Maybe it was the summer, so he didn't have school. I don't know. But yeah, from that beginning scene throughout, the sort of timelines meshing up don't quite work, and we get some stuff discarded that was established in Civil War. Star Wars thing in particular, where he doesn't really know about it that much, and then he's building a Lego Death Star with Ned. So, there's some stuff here. There's definitely some stuff. Jon Favreau is back as Happy Hogan for the first time in forever. Nice to see him come back. I like his little role here as the babysitter, the one that is ignoring all of Peter's calls and texts.
He has to do something in between directing live-action movies and Disney cartoons.
Pays the bills. It's nice that we get this duo back. But Tom Holland is Peter Parker. He really called his shot on this, because in 2013 he was interviewed about superheroes, and he said, as a joke, in the reboot of the reboot, I would like to play Spider-Man after Andrew Garfield, and here he goddamn is. He attended a real high school in the Bronx after jokingly telling Marvel he should do that. And then Marvel are like, okay, we've called your bluff. You start Monday. Nobody at this school believed that he was Spider-Man, so he felt he passed that test. He posted a lot of videos of himself doing flips. He obviously has the big gymnastic background. All of this really helped many, including me, accept him in this casting. And I think he hits the ground running. Like, he is just so good immediately. Like, we saw in Civil War how he is, and it's better here because he also gets to do the drama throughout. And it's just a really good, authentic human being, a performance as an authentic human. Like, it's his first time on a plane. He is wowed by how big his room is. It's not Tobey Maguire doing his sort of like attempt to have a not quite broken voice. It's not Andrew Garfield being a melodramatic hipster emo teen. He's just an excited kid, but without being annoying. All the stuff with him going out into the neighborhood and his relationship with the local deli owner and his sort of shitty patrol where it's like, do a flip, and he thwarts what he thinks is a car robbery and it's not, and everyone's shouting at him. I think all of that is just tremendous.
This is a part of Parker's career that we've never properly seen before. We basically go from, in all the other movies, like, he learns how to do it and then he's swinging through Manhattan and is taking on people there, whereas this is, he's in Queens, he's doing everything in Queens, and it's just not the same level of crime as he gets. Like, he's not doing bank robberies all the time. He's doing little community helping things.
He's helping old ladies cross the street.
Yeah, just thinking of like Spider-Man 1, where he does the whole learning how to swing, and then next scene with Spider-Man, he's in New York that we know, rather than...
They made a deliberate effort to avoid all the skyscraper swinging, because we've seen it so much. I think he's good in the school as well. He's not like uber nerd that's getting beat downs regularly, because I think a subtle part of this is that this is meant to be like a science focused school, like a one you have to get into rather than just a random high school. So everyone is a little bit cleverer. That's why we have this updated Flash Thompson.
Love this updated Flash Thompson.
Yes, Tom Revolori as Flash Thompson. So he's updated from his traditional like jock bully to a kind of rich social media bully kind of thing. And Tom Holland reports his brief time undercover at that high school confirmed this is an accurate portrayal. Actually, I think even he made the suggestion based on his experience. Revolori received death threats after being cast because he's not white, because people are the absolute worst. But I really love it. I know there is a portion of people that are resistant to all the changes they make in this film. Aunt May not being 80 million years old, Flash not being white and not being a jock. There's lots of stuff that happens here that is very uncharted territory. I think these people need to just... We've had all of this. Let's try something a bit different that is still true to the spirit and everything. And I think this updated Flash Thompson works really, really well.
Yeah, like, we've had 2 movies of the same Flash Thompson, and none of them particularly interesting. They're just there as, like, the bully. And I'm not saying that the Flash Thompson in this movie isn't also a bully, but it's a very different kind of bully.
It's a more modern, realistic take on bullying. Or an underrepresented sector of bullying.
Yeah. This isn't, I'm going to punch you in the face because I dislike you. This is, he's just a smug rich kid.
Yeah, he just thinks he's better than him. And, like, he's not completely ostracised and everything, or anything like that. Like, he is part of the general friendship group, and he's part of the academic decathlon team because he's clever, because everyone at this school is clever. And he's annoyed that Peter is just that little bit cleverer than him. And, you know, Peter gets the answer that he gets wrong. It works really well. He gets some funny little moments, and obviously he's a great actor that has a bright future, so I'm very happy with him. I don't see him eventually becoming Agent Venom, but, you know, who knows?
He's have to bulk out a bit for that.
A little bit. Jacob Batalon as Ned is a name taken from the comics, loosely based on one of Miles Morales' friends. This is his first movie, which is, you know, good for him. He's a lot of fun. He at times threatens to be a little bit annoying or a bit too much, but I think, you know, for a guy doing his first movie and finding his feet, his questions when he discovers Peter's secret, and the way he discovers Peter's secret, with Peter comes home from his patrol and he's just delicately, gently getting in the window and quietly sneaking around so Aunt May doesn't hear, and he closes the door and lets himself down from the ceiling, and then camera pans over and Ned drops this Lego Death Star in shock. Immediately have someone who knows his secret, and not to pin the whole movie on the secret identity, because I think a lot of prominent comic book movie people and comic book writers as well have said that maybe the idea of the secret identity is a little bit played out in terms of its all-importance. Obviously you don't want everyone knowing that he is Peter Parker like they do with Iron Man, but I think you need to have characters around him that know who he is, and it makes for a pretty fun dynamic, and it gives him someone to talk to, and it gives us a gateway into the way his powers work.
We have had lots of Spider-Man movies now that do have the secret identities like played up an awful lot, and now we're coming into a franchise which they recognise that Peter Parker Spider-Man should be a secret because that is a core tenet of the character, but they also recognise that, as you said, like, they do need people that are around him that know, because there's an inherent drama to that.
Yeah, and it makes for fun stuff with some people do know, some people don't know, and the threat that the friend might accidentally reveal it and stuff like that. And he does say, I'm not good at keeping secrets, and all that stuff. We have Zendaya as Michelle. For me, the breakout character of this movie and a strong contender for best performance. I mean, she gets the single word name Zendaya. I gather she has done a lot of work for the Disney Channel, and she has since been in The Greatest Showman, and while I didn't know much about her, I can recognise this as a dramatic about face on what she's known for. She's basically Ali Shearer in The Breakfast Club here. She absolutely crushed the audition. They cast her in the room. I just love her sort of standoffishness. It's nice to see this kind of realistic character on the big screen. She's not like the weird girl. Like, she's not ostracized in any way. She's just a bit different, you know. Like, she's got a aloofness to her and a different energy. And Zendaya talks about, everyone's a little bit weird, so it was nice to play someone who's a little bit weird. And they will ultimately do a tease, Call Me MJ. When she was first cast in this film in an unnamed role, the rumours started going around that she was playing a non-white Mary Jane. And I remember all the, Michael B. Jordan as Human Torch, anytime this sort of stuff happens, you get all these horrible racist comments online because, again, people are the worst and don't deserve good things. But she's fucking great.
Yeah, we've had Gwen Stacy and for 2 movies now, and that is a dynamic that is probably less famous than the Mary Jane dynamic. The MJ dynamic is something that we've gone away from, but it's also something that they didn't really properly do with Kirsten Dunst in the original trilogy, because they don't even position her as a love interest in this movie, just a girl who is there.
She even comments on it. She's like, I'm not obsessed with him, I'm just observant and stuff like that. And at the end when she's like, where are you going? I'm just kidding, I don't care.
She is higher billed than the quote-unquote love interest of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, she is on the poster and whatnot. You got Laura Harrier as Liz, and she is the love interest. Like, she has so much more to do in this movie than Zendaya does, but Zendaya gets the massive credit because she's coming off the Disney movie, and it's just one of those interesting things that obviously she's only going to be a love interest for the one movie. I can't see her coming back to the second one. Yeah. But yeah, like, Zendaya's role in this is she's great in everything she does, but I've got no idea what to pin down that character as. Like, I've got no idea what her dynamic is.
She's just chaotic good. She's just there to just throw the energy off, get some scene moving in a different way.
I love her. I love her performance, but it's just like, I get what Ned's supposed to do. I get what Flash is supposed to do. I get what Liz is supposed to do. I even get like the little lines you get from the other people in the academic decathlon. And then Zendaya as MJ is just, she's in there as a flavouring to flesh it out as a high school movie.
I think they're 100% going to go down the romance avenue in a future addition, because while she makes all these comments about not caring, she does also give him a couple of lingering looks. And I think they've got great chemistry as well. So
it's nice to see a love interest get introduced and not actually have to be the love interest straight away. It'll be nice to see this be an organic growth.
So yeah, we've got our little core group of the young'uns. I assume Liz is out of here, but I love this little group. I think they are 100% the backbone, the strength of this, and why I think going forward it's going to be good. There's a clear John Hughes influence that the writers talk about. They all became very good friends. They were forced, quote unquote, to go hang out together for like a few days before filming started. They were sat down with several John Hughes movies and an unlimited pizza budget in Tom Holland's house, and they just became good friends. We also have Marissa Tomei as May Parker. She was used as, when they were pitching what they wanted their take on this character to be, they said, like Marissa Tomei. And then they got her. So that worked out well. Fuck everybody who wants her to be 80 years old. Why is an 80-year-old woman the aunt of a 15-year-old child? Unless we're missing out the word great in there, that's not accurate. Of course, the classic dynamic of this little old lady that, like, she finds out that Peter's getting himself into danger, is going to have a heart attack. Of course, there are some classic memories with this, but if we're going to do this modern take with a modern Flash Thompson and authentic representation of Queens and all of that stuff, which we don't have time to focus on, but I also do like the way they depict Queens, then we need to update May Parker. And I know some people are a little bit weirded out that we have a hot chick as his a hot chick. Wow, that's really gross terminology.
I'm not so weirded out by the fact that they've made her attractive, because God damn it, Marissa Tomei is attractive. What I am disturbed by is the fact that they keep on making comments on it.
Everybody wants to fuck May Parker, yes. The deli owner, the waiter in the Thai place, Tony Stark, I think Ned even, like, gives her a lingering look. And Peter just sort of has that annoyed smile all the time when it keeps happening. I like their dynamic. Regardless of anything about whether it's weird that she's younger or anything like that, I like that they went for this sort of older sister type, like that they're friends as much as they're relatives. That she, helping him get ready for the dance and helping him learn to tie a tie and helping him learn to dance. And she drives him to a party and says, have fun, not like, you have to be back by this time and don't go there and don't do this. We still see that she cares about him and she's worried when he's missing, but I like that it's this sort of modern take on like single parenthood type thing, and I do really like that.
She is great. I just wish she had more to do.
Yeah, I assume she will. Like, I think they've talked about how they want her to be a kind of community activist type character, so she's got like roots in the neighbourhood, so hopefully we get more. And we certainly will, based on how this movie ends.
Yes, they position Tony Stark as the parental figure of this movie, which I do think works, because it's nice to have someone who we actually know, but I feel it does give May a short shrift in her actually, like, in that classic comic book way where, like, he'll go talk to Aunt May and then find a lesson through her stories that he can, like, parlay into what he's doing with Spider-Man. I feel like we're missing that kind of element. Instead, we just get her passively in the background, because Tony Stark is going to give him actual superheroic advice, which he's going to chop and change and do what he wants with.
Back to the plot of the movie. Peter and Ned...
Jesus Christ.
I know, I'm sorry, but I see no way we couldn't talk about all of that, because all of that is so important, I think. So they go to Liz's party with the foolish notion of proving that Peter knows Spider-Man. Instead, he notices Vulture's crew, goes off after them, connects the dots that they are selling this alien tech that he encountered in the bank robbery, and after ignoring a lecture from Tony Stark, he tracks them to Washington, D.C., so he goes with his academic decathlon team, who are coincidentally competing there. So as I said, we've got suburbs, not skyscrapers in this scene. Funny stuff with, like, he gets to the golf course, and it's like, fuck. I don't want to, like, linger on this part of the movie too long. Like, we can talk about Donald Glover in a bit, and we've talked about the villains already, so we can probably move on after this. But the general thing of incorporating all this tech from previous movies, I think it works really well because, one, it grounds what's happened, and it fleshes it out, and it makes it all feel real. But it also allows them to be very comic booky in this film, in a way that it's not that the Raimi and the Webb ones weren't comic booky, it's just they were kind of trying to be a serious explanation for everything and a sort of grounded comic book. This is like quite bombastical. Like, we've got tech that lets you move through walls and special like like alien guns and all that. So it achieves both. It lets it be more fantastical and more realistic at the same time. So I really like that they went with this, and it's a quick way to bring him into the MCU as well. Like, like to make it authentic. Like they keep getting to use all this terminology and have these little appearances.
Yeah, it's also nice that like none of them really understand how it works.
They're just fucking around with it.
It's just one guy has figured out that he can do 3-4 different things with the tech that he's got. And that's what I got the implication of, is they just make the same like 3 or 4 weapons for everyone. It's like the matter phaser, the anti-gravity gun, blah blah blah. And so like other things are being developed, but he's just getting a couple of uses out of all these things. And so even though you learn what the weapons will do, and they kind of like limit themselves to just that little corner of things.
Yeah. So Peter hacks his suit while he's in Washington, and he removes the training wheels protocol. And then with the assistance of his new onboard AI, Karen, he goes after the Vulture's crew. He stops them from stealing one of Damage Control's trucks, but he gets knocked out inside said truck, ends up spending the night in the Damage Control facility, misses the competition, barely makes it back in time to save them from an accident that has occurred within the Washington Monument. So we have Jennifer Connelly here as Karen the AI. While it is incredibly cute that she is married to Paul Bettany, aka Vision, aka Jarvis, so we have the husband and wife playing the AIs, she's actually cast due to her involvement in John Hughes' movie, so best of both, I suppose. They wanted to do this to bring in an element that has not been seen in the films, in that Peter talks to himself a lot in the comics. We get a lot of thought bubbles, and it's hard to do things like that, and it's an advantage of the medium that you can't really do in live action. So by giving him an AI, rather than just quipping at the villain or talking to one of his allies over a radio or something, by having it be an AI so it doesn't feel like there's consequences to talking to them, so he can just say whatever he's thinking. It kind of simulates that, and I do dig the vibe. And, you know, she doesn't have tons and tons of lines, but it lets you do that, it lets him talk, and then you get the funny stuff with, like, you know, instant kill mode, and this is your chance, Peter, kiss her. She's
really good, I think. Obviously, Paul Bettany kind of, like, stamped out his role and became actually recognisable in, like, the fact that people are excited to see him become a live-action character rather than just a voice. I think it's sad that Jennifer Connelly gets more to do than Kerry Condon in any of her roles so far.
Who is in this movie?
Kerry Condon does get a voice Friday in this movie, but it's still one of those things where Jennifer Connelly basically gets like an extended bit of the movie where she is the only other character being voiced at that point, and gets like an entire personality developed through that, which I mean is great. But it's sad that like the replacement of Tony's AI hasn't had anywhere near the amount of investment.
Well, if Robert Downey Jr. would just agree to do Iron Man 4, then we could just get this on with. But no, I'm not sure I want to see that anyway.
No, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure they just make it like Pepper's jealous of Friday or something awful.
Wonderful. I like that they develop this genuine like sort of friendship, and she's like, I would not think it was bad or whatever. Yeah, it's all just really good stuff, and like, you know, how long have we been here? 37 minutes. 37 minutes. And then at the Washington Monument, I like the little touches that he's scared of heights, because we haven't seen him swinging from proper skyscrapers yet. So this is the highest he's ever been, and he's actually scared, and that's a nice way to go, like to remind you this is a kid
who hasn't properly tested out his abilities yet. He knows he can stick to walls, but
can he go completely like horizontal with his feet attached to the side of something? Yes, it turns out he can. I like the little drone. It's a bit gimmicky, and I wonder if they'll do something with it in future, because it doesn't do a huge amount here, but you know, it's a fun, weird little thing. I think some people have complained about how much tech there is in it, but I think almost every single piece of tech shown in this film has been used by Spider-Man at some point in the comics. It's all coming at once. So, and also if it's built by Tony Stark, that makes sense. My favourite thing about this Washington Monument scene is when Michelle has chosen not to go inside, and their teacher Martin Starr asks why, and she said she's not keen to check out something built by slaves, and he's like, I'm sure it wasn't, and then looks over at the security guard who's just doing this little hand thing of like, and then he just leaves her out of that. I think that's wonderful.
Again, it's nice, like all these scenes with the kids all together are really nice, and obviously you get to see that, like, they actually have personalities. They're trying to get everyone out of the lift that Peter's trying to like rescue people from, and then Flash is just like pushing.
Yeah, me first, take my trophy. Yeah, and it's classic Spider-Man stuff, like stopping this thing from falling, like the upside down. Like they evoke that upside down kiss, and he's hanging there in front of Liz, and Karen says, this is your chance, Peter, kiss her, and then he just falls. I like that they don't just completely throw out the legacy of Spider-Man on film. They use it to subvert, and it's all very good. So Peter follows a lead from his first encounter with this little crew, finds the location of their next weapons deal, which is on the Staten Island ferry, manages to break it up, but during the chaos, because the FBI were there as well, the ferry almost sinks, like it splits in half, And the combined efforts of Peter and Iron Man, who shows up, stop it. And Tony is very angry and takes away his suit, which reminds me, I forgot to talk about something earlier, but we'll do it here. But first, Donald Glover is Aaron Davis. Very clearly cast in response to the Donald for Spider-Man movement that was going around before Garfield got the gig. I love it. Like he of course has also voiced Miles Morales in some cartoons, and here he is playing Aaron Davis. He mentions his nephew, which is of course Miles Morales. In the comics, this character is a villain, the Prowler. I don't know if they're going to do that. For me, this is probably a one-time appearance, but they have that avenue if they want it.
It's crazy to think that in the time between this movie being released and now, Donald Glover has become more busy.
It used to be, oh, good for him, he's got a role, and now it's like, how's he going to have time to do this thing I want him to do?
Yeah, like, the man has gone from being, oh, look, it's cool, he's playing Aaron Davis in Spider-Man, to now playing Lando Calrissian and Simba.
With the second season of his award-winning show coming out. He's got one less project to keep him busy, though, although he wasn't too busy. Anyway, I like him giving Peter shit about not being good at interrogating people and stuff like that, and you need to get better at this, which I'm sure he will. They deleted a post-credit scene which would have seen Aaron still stuck to the car hours later and calling Miles to say he was going to be late home.
Is that on the Blu-ray?
I don't know if it's available to view, but
I need
it was...
to find if this is a real thing that I can watch.
Yes. Also like that Peter leaves him there and he's like, you deserve it, you are a criminal. So
22 hours.
And he's got ice cream in the boot as well. The ferry scene is, of course, it's evocative of what Raimi was doing. There's always one of these scenes. Spider-Man struggling to save everyone from some massive mass death scenario. He's holding this ferry together with all his webbing. This scene also sets up Scorpion's arrest. He is the attempted buyer, I believe, in this, very subtly. And the events of all of this convince Vulture to finally try and rob the plane. But more importantly, so Tony steps in, and I forgot to mention earlier, when Tony stepped in before, we get this reveal that he's not actually piloting the suit, and that he is just enjoying himself in a completely different country and talking to him over the phone. So when he turns up here, Peter gives him shit and being like, you couldn't even bother to show up, and he steps out of the suit and it's RDJ, and it's like, oh shit. And they use this voice effect that makes it sound like he isn't there as well, just to really double down on that. Because in that first one, you can kind of tell, like, he sounds more distant than he usually does as Iron Man, and then you get that, and it's a lovely little sort of fake out, and we get him doing some acting, like dressing him down and applying what he learned from Iron Man 3, the whole thing of if you're nothing without the suit, you shouldn't have it, and stuff like that. But yeah, this is why they paid him money, I think.
This is like the third thing he's done in this movie, but it's also like, I struggle to call it the emotional centerpiece, but it is definitely a key point in Miles' arc, which is him basically, he needs to learn to be a hero, and if he can only be a hero when he's got all these gadgets and doodads helping him, then he doesn't deserve it.
It's kind of a twist on with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
I also like the touch that he reveals that he has been hearing and seeing all these messages and voicemails, despite completely ignoring them. He is completely aware of everything that he's doing. That is nice, because they obviously come across as kind of dicks for just completely ignoring this kid who just wants to help. But we do get that little reveal.
Well, Happy definitely just comes up as a dick because of it, because...
Yeah. But then he does it as well. Like, he's like, oh, I thought you quit band.
Oh, that is true. But, like, he does have the bit with Ned where he just hangs up on Ned.
Well, of course you hang up on Ned. But he initially accepts his fate. He throws himself back into school. He is no longer the Spider-Man for now. He asks Liz to homecoming. She says yes. When he shows up to take her, who answers the motherfucking door but Michael Keaton, the Vulture? And because of inherent racism, none of us saw this twist coming.
It's not a twist, it's a reveal.
Okay, the reveal, fine. That her father is the Vulture. How is that?
Better.
Okay. So, of course, Peter is very on edge. And during the drive to this dance, Michael Keaton deduces that Peter is Spider-Man as well. And, Liz is asked to step out of the car while they have the dad talk, and he warns Peter to stay away and gives him the free pass and all of that. Of course Peter ignores him, goes after him with the help of Ned, and the Vulture initially lures him into a trap, pinning him under rubble and leaving him for dead. We will talk about the consequences of that as the next thing, but I just want to go over this stuff first. I love this not twist. I love that there's no music playing during this. You get this really uncomfortable silence, and I love that he gives her the pass because of Liz, and everything he says is about family. Like, he's doing this for Liz, This is what he's willing to do to protect his family. And all of that just makes him a far more realistic, rounded character in one moment than most comic book villains. And it's what I said at the beginning, in that, like, he doesn't have significantly more screen time, but just little things like this just make him way more effective. And then we will then see him when Peter catches up to him, and he's like, selling weapons, that's really honourable. And it's like, how do you think Tony Stark paid for that tower he lives in? And it's like, yeah, fucking nailed him as well, didn't you?
This is the scene where Michael Keaton, earns his paycheck. He's been good in every other scene in this movie.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton is so good in this scene.
Yeah.
Just the way his face changes when he figures it out, and you get the little hints that he's beginning to, with the whole thing about I recognise your voice. Why do I recognise your voice? Have we?
And I'm glad that happens, because how many fucking movies it's like you would know that it's him just the moment he talks.
Not like he doesn't have a distinct voice,
because he tries to put on a bit of a voice when he rescues all of the kids in the Washington Monument, but I guess he hadn't considered doing that for complete strangers because he didn't think anyone would recognise him.
Yeah, because this movie's so low stakes comparatively, nothing in this movie results in the end of the world or anything like that. This is just a thief trying to steal things so he can make money for his family. We're at that point where the hero meets the villain, and the hero doesn't immediately have to go punch the villain in the face because the villain's trying to murder people. There's not that tension there. There is the actual push and pull of Peter doesn't want people to know that he's Spider-Man, so he's not going to immediately take out the guy that he knows is the villain.
They're in this little stalemate, because obviously also Toombs isn't going to assault this kid in front of his daughter or in front of anyone.
Because again, this isn't life or death stakes. This is just Peter wants to take out a criminal who he has reason to believe, I think, has killed people, but I don't think he's seen anyone actually be murdered or anything by what Toombs has been doing, or anything that has happened that's resulted in deaths has been an accident. This isn't the Guardians meeting Ronan. The idea is we're going to fire a fuck-off missile at his chest, because the moment you see him, we have to kill him. This is two people who are at opposite ends of a moral spectrum, but in no way does the fate of the universe rest on Peter's shoulders if he takes out the Vulture.
Couple of tiny little beats here that I also like, but aren't worth several minutes of conversation or anything. Michelle swears at Peter when she sees him at prom, just gives him the middle finger. It's another nice little realistic thing that people do. I like that Flash takes Betty to prom. Those two characters end up married in the comics. It's very subtle, but I like that it's there. I like that Ned gets to be the man in the chair finally in the computer lab, and he's got 3 computers so he can look up this car that Peter's stolen. Well, yes, porn. He can look up the car's manual. He can track. He can do the I just like all of that stuff.
I like that he doesn't have to roll back and forward between the 2 screens.
Yes.
But why doesn't he just turn on the 3rd screen?
I don't know.
On the right? Why does he do it behind him? It's not quicker.
He didn't think about it. He just did what he did and he committed to it.
Just move another chair out the way and just roll left and right. Again, not as interesting cinematically, but...
Yes, and we're going to skip right over where he takes down the second Shocker, because there is not time. So, Peter, trapped under this rubble, of course summons up this strength to free himself. He gives chase, he stops the Vulture from robbing Tony Stark's plane full of tech. It is being moved to the new Avengers facility. It crashes into a closed amusement park. They continue fighting. Peter tries to warn the Vulture that his little flight suit is malfunctioning. Fails. It explodes, kind of, but he does carry him from the burning wreckage and leaves him for the authorities to find. So Kevin Feige, of course, pushed for this scene. It is a recreation of issue 33 of Amazing Spider-Man. The iconic Spider-Man moment. One of the most important moments in all of comic books, arguably. The inner monologue as he tries to summon the strength to lift this impossibly heavy object off himself. I love the execution of this, and I love that Kevin Feige fought for it. I love how scared he is and how he just immediately is a child again. He can't lift it, so he panics, he's afraid, he is trapped, he's calling out for someone. You buy how terrified he is. And then the response to that is to say, "Come on, Spider-Man," when he sees the reflection in the water of his mask and stuff. And that's the entire point in the identity. The reason he calls himself Spider-Man and not Spider-Boy despite being a kid is because he projects this character of Spider-Man and he plays that identity to give himself the confidence and the courage to confront danger and to be quippy and confident when he maybe isn't very smooth in his day-to-day life and stuff like that. And I think it's such a powerful scene, executed brilliantly.
It's interesting they've done it here because it's such an iconic moment, but it's definitely not tied to the Vulture. I think it's Dr. Octopus is the cause of it. like as a combination of like Dr. Octopus and the Lizard or Kirk Connors and stuff like that are around at this one. And so doing it now, obviously, it's a statement of intent to do it in this movie. To be like, we're doing this iconic scene now, where we're placing this pivotal moment in Spider-Man's history in part of this movie. I do think it raises the stakes an awful lot if you were aware of like what they're going for. And it's so perfectly executed. If you read this comic book, then this is what you wanted to see adapted to a screen, and you got it here 100%. Even if the cause of it is different, it's still the same monologue, the same kind of like build-up and stuff to it.
Yeah. That kind of scene has been mimicked and copied and homaged ad nauseum. Like this is a defining sort of trope of comic books, and he will never get past this obstacle, but he must summon up the inner fortitude, and he will do it.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, where did they crash land, Matt?
I don't know.
It's Coney Island.
It's Coney Island, okay, my bad. I will edit that in. I will edit myself being correct in and erase this moment from history. Just you watch me. I won't. I will let it be.
I don't listen to the podcast after I've done it.
How very Mike Thomas of you. I like that he tries to save him at the end there. Like, it's all fun and games that we're fighting. I don't actually want you to die, though. And he's like, oh, you'll see.
I don't think the final fight is the best part of this. I think all the good stuff in terms of like their interactions have happened already, and I do like the final beat of him trying to save him. But the act.
I don't think it's meant to be a final fight as much as it's just this is where the conclusion of that story happens.
Sure. I mean, that's a complaint that we've got against all these movies. It's that the final confrontation is not the most interesting resolution to all the stuff coming beforehand, but I still appreciate they still do play on the dynamic between the two characters, and it's still very much like Peter doesn't want to see him die because he does like Liz and doesn't want to see her grow up without a dad.
And we see the consequences of that next. So with Vulture arrested, Liz, she leaves the school because he doesn't want his family in New York during the trial. Happy Hogan thanks Peter for the help with this, because he probably would have lost his job if this plane went missing. He takes him to the new Avengers HQ, where Tony offers him another new suit, and a spot on the team with a press conference and everything. Peter, who initially all he wanted in the world was to be an Avenger, and now he says politely no. He wants to continue being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So Tony instead proposes to Pepper at this press conference.
I do like that Peter turns around and goes like, this was a test, right? Like this wasn't serious or anything like that. And then Tony's like, yep, no, 100%. This is a test you passed.
And then Pepper's immediately like, did you guys screw this up? Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow's back as Pepper Potts. I did not realise this was a fan theory, but there apparently was a fan theory that Pepper died in the surgery that removed the extremis from her, and Tony had been in denial ever since, and that's why he turned into a massive dick bag.
What?
I know, I offer the counter-argument he has always been a massive dick bag.
Killing off Gwyneth Paltrow off-screen is definitely not something these movies would do.
No. Yeah, she's alive, she's back. It's nice to see her back, and that their relationship is fixed.
Obviously, whatever happened in Civil War was not as serious as we were led to believe, because this is, a couple weeks later? There's 6 months, is it? Or
yeah, I think it's meant to be a few months after, yeah. Either way, it's a fun little scene. Like, Happy's been carrying the ring around since 2008, which is when Iron Man 1 came out, I think.
Who knows? This movie fucks the timeline up so badly.
Yeah, this also confirms there are Avengers. Like, we ended our Civil War podcast saying there isn't an Avengers team. There is, and they have a brand new shiny compound, and Peter has offered a room in it, and that Vision will be in the room next door.
That's the only other Avenger?
Yep, it's Tony, it's Peter, and it's Vision. Who knows? We will see.
I would watch that movie.
Sure. Happy hanging out in a high school bathroom is not a good look for him at all. Texting a student to come meet him in the bathroom and then says he's been there a while as well. We also get that reveal that Michelle is MJ, and I like that Peter doesn't get away with standing Liz up at the dance. He goes over to her and he says, sorry, and anything I could do, and all this, and he says sorry, and she says, you're always saying that, which, specifically which one, and it's not that he ends the movie like in the doghouse or anything. Like, she ultimately is like, just whatever's going on with you, I hope you figure it out. But I like that there's no kiss. I like that there's no like big redemption for him romantically here, that he bailed on her and she has not forgotten that, and I like that is a beat.
Yeah, again, like, this movie nails the dynamics between them. I mean, the comic books of Spider-Man are pretty much a soap opera. There's so much relationship stuff in those comic books. Yes, he's a superhero, but it's very much the balancing of a job or school and your love life and your superheroic life, and how the love life and the work life are almost like entirely the ones that get put by the wayside because he is so into being a superhero. And this movie just completely nails it, is that every single time that he plans to do something, he just completely forgets about it because he wants to save other people so much that he puts his friends and girlfriends and family to the side, quite often to his own detriment, to his own happiness. His own happiness is detriment, but it's what makes him such like a good, iconic hero. And this
true
movie doesn't
hero,
forget that.
Unsung hero. Yeah, and then the movie ends with Aunt May discovering his secret and an almost swear. Which,
almost our first F word in a Marvel movie.
Yeah. In the mid-credits scene, Vulture is approached by Matt Gargan, aka the Scorpion, who was the attempted buyer in that very scene. And he has heard a rumour that Adrian Toomes knows Spider-Man's identity, and he wants to know. Vulture doesn't give it to him, which is somewhat surprising, and we'll discuss the ramifications in a moment. And then our final scene is Captain America is in this movie, doing cringy PSAs that are a tribute to old presidential PSAs that got shown in schools. And very funny one earlier on. Hannibal Buress is the gym teacher. I was like, pretty sure that guy's a war criminal now, but never mind. And we get one at the end here with him talking about how patience is a virtue, and sometimes you feel like you did it for nothing. And a nice little tongue-in-cheek thing about these Marvel end credit scenes.
These scenes almost make up for the fact that he's wearing the god-awful Avengers costume.
But that makes it better in some ways, because it's the worst. He doesn't look cool. He looks his dorkiest. And I like that he's like pointing to the gym teacher who's standing on the opposite side of the television and stuff. It's all just really good shit, low-level stuff where you remember that Cap is the squarest square in all of Squaresville. So May finding out, that's pretty uncharted territory in these movies. It's always the eternal she can never know type thing. And we set this up for the next time where she will know. And hopefully that will give her a lot more to do because she can properly parent him and know about every aspect of his life. And I hope that leads to good things. I know some people were pretty angry about this, but I'm into it.
I'm up for it. She's not in Infinity War, is she?
No.
I know Ned's in it, but I'm just wondering whether or not we're going to get any part of it.
I think most of the kids are in it. Maybe not Zendaya, really? But I think several of the incidental kids are in it.
I mean, this is the first movie we've had that really ends on like a proper cliffhanger in a while that we haven't seen resolved in a movie since. Like Doctor Strange does end with the Loki, like where's Loki, blah blah blah. But we got that result. We get that resolved in Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok obviously ends with a giant spaceship, but we know we're going to get that resolved in Infinity War. And now this movie, May finds out, but we're not going to get anything really. We might get like a line of dialogue or something like that about like, I've been in the doghouse with May ever since she found out.
Well, the next film is going to be set a year later, so we're not going to see the initial conversation. We're just going to see the new dynamic, and I think that can be fun.
Should be. It is something that I'm interested in, and I do hope that, like, because they have announced that Spider-Man Homecoming 2 is going to feature a different Marvel hero to Iron Man in a similar role, but I do hope that they don't have it be a parental figure, and instead it's someone who's kind of teaching him to be a superhero whilst May gets to be a maternal figure. Hawkeye, please live. Michael Mando is, or Mondo, but spelled funny maybe, is Scorpion, is Matt Guy. As this is yet more of our sort of Sinister Six teasing. He is a character who historically has gone after the family members of people he's trying to get to. Just this general interaction with the Vulture. It's been read several ways. I think, to me, there's only one, but some people have suggested Vulture doesn't give up the identity because he wants to be the one to go after Peter. I think it's far more likely that he spared Peter the first time because he saved Liz, so maybe he's sparing him this time because he saved him. And he doesn't want a kid to die, fundamentally. While he's not got a problem with killing him if he interferes with him, I don't think he's overly enthused at the idea of someone else going out hunting him down and murdering him. So you can choose your own interpretation, but either way, I think it's an interesting little scene. Yeah, I think it is too. Commander, they're probably most well known for playing Vars in Far Cry 3. He's fun. It's nice to see him get to do something else. He's also very good in Better Call Saul, but like as a villainous role, he's probably best known for being the crazy villain in Far Cry 3. So maybe they'll go for something like that in Spider-Man. Who knows? So some miscellaneous stuff here. There's a lot more than usual. Some of the objects in damage control / the plane have the Ultron bot head. We have Thor's belt, Megingjord, which Happy can't pronounce and neither can I. We have the Mark 42 armor for Iron Man 3. We have a bunch of Chitauri tech, just tons of stuff, and I'm sure
some people were hoping for even more, but we have some stuff there. The plane going invisible with the retro-reflective panels, that was a suggestion of small boy Harley Keener from Iron Man 3 that Tony dismissed, but here he is using it, so the spirit of Harley is alive. Spider-Man never throws one single punch in this movie. Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones is used twice. They, of course, famously covered the Spider-Man theme tune on one of their albums, and they are also from Queens. We got Andrew Garfield wearing a Ramones t-shirt or having a Ramones poster or something like that in his outing. But lots of cameos. We have Tyne Daly as the head of damage control, or the representative, Hemke Madeira as Mr. Delmar, Hannibal Buress, as I said, as a gym coach. That's a fun little role. As I said, Chris Evans as Captain America, Martin Starr as Mr. Harrington, potentially the same character as Incredible Hulk, if they even give a shit, because it's Incredible Hulk. The little girl from Nice Guys.
Oh, Angerise Rice.
Sure, whatever.
Angerise Rice.
She plays Betty Brant, she goes to prom with Flash, and she's on the TV in the sort of like school TV club thing. Tiffany Espenson plays Cindy Moon, which is the name of the character Silk. She is in the academic decathlon team. I highly doubt she's going to end up being Silk, but, nice little...
That would be very awkward if she did. What happens when Cindy Moon and Peter Parker are in the same room together?
They can't stop banging. They were bitten by the same spider. It's a whole thing. Stan Lee plays a random man in Queens shouting, "Don't make me come down there." Probably one of the more appropriate cameos he does. Kerry Condon, as I said, is back as Friday. Gossel Beavis is Doris Toombs. I've written and deleted the names of several other teachers. There's so many people in this movie. Kenneth Choi is Principal Marita. Interesting here because he, of course, played one of the Howling Commandos in Captain America 1. He has a picture of that character in his office, and the sort of connect the dots explanation is he is playing the grandson of his own character, which is very nice. It also potentially explains why his school are still showing these Captain America videos, despite, as Hannibal Buress says, this guy is a war criminal now. Also in this school are pictures of Howard Stark, Abraham Erskine, and Bruce Banner at various points that I have not noticed, but take the word of the internet experts that they are there. Jane Levy and Kaya Scudelario, the chick from Skins, they were considered to play Peter's love interest. I have to assume that this was Michelle, not Liz. I mean, Jane Levy's famously a redhead, so, MJ. The iconic poster used for this episode, as well as just the general poster, with Spider-Man wearing the yellow blazer lying on his back. That is a picture that a member of the crew took of Tom Holland sleeping in between takes. This is the MCU movie with the most Oscar winners in it, with 3. Gwyneth Paltrow, Marissa Tomei, Jennifer Connelly. Lots of nominees in a lot of these films, obviously, but this is the most winners. Tom Holland asked Kevin Feige's permission to make the fan theory that the little kid in Iron Man 2 wearing the Iron Man mask was a young Peter after he heard that fan theory. And Kevin Feige went, yes. So Tom Holland revealed that's canon. Sokovia Accords are mentioned in the history class.
In a history class, they happened 2 months ago. What class is that?
I'm pretty sure that would be considered a large moment in history. Whether it was,
I'm just surely that's politics class. If that's
maybe it's politics.
Could you imagine being sat there in a history class and then someone says well, Brexit happened yesterday.
Donald Trump is president now. The Triskelion is seen on some road signs and mentioned out loud. Then some stuff for the future of this Homecoming verse. The idea is for each sequel to cover another school year. Vincent D'Onofrio wants to play the Kingpin. Let him. Matthew McConaughey has expressed interest in playing the Green Goblin. Let him. Cillian Murphy wants to play a villain. Let him. And Alfred Molina has expressed interest in returning as Dr. Octopus. Don't let him.
Matt Damon has recently turned down a role in Spider-Man Homecoming 2 as well. I saw someone put out a rumour that it was Alistair Smythe. That was yesterday, which was April Fool's Day. Take that with a pinch of salt.
Indeed. Fuck everyone that does that, because some of these things are real and you never know what is and isn't.
I think it's we're getting increasing to the point where people are putting out things and basically being like, oh, this person dropped out of this movie. And it's is that an April Fool's Day joke? Or is that you've not even done this person's been cast, you've done this person was considered and then dropped out. And then it's just that could not be a joke.
Yep, exactly. Didn't really find a slot to put this in anywhere, but just generally I love the movement that comes with this take on Spider-Man. Tom Holland is performing most of these stunts himself. He has, of course, got the gymnastic background. And the movement feels far more authentic. It feels more parkour-y and less sort of hyper-exaggerated video game physics. jumping
You
around.
may have seen that video of him on the lip sync battle.
Yes, have I ever? My God, am I sexually confused. Particularly one that stood out for me is when he jumps into the burning deli. Just the leap, it just, I don't know, just stuff like that. I love the general, he feels more real. Is
Yes.
what I will say. The way
I
they
also
handle.
love the eyes.
Of course, because they have the adaptive lenses, which explains his reality-defying eyes from the comic books, which change size to convey emotion.
And also freaks out small children.
Apologies, that was a ton of stuff, so let's get into our final segments. So Villain Watch, I think we have a strong contender for Loki's crown of best villain. I don't think he is the best villain, but
Yeah.
after
This
a
is-
long spate of not so good, this is one of the best ones.
Yeah, this is the best villain since Loki in Avengers. I don't think there's any contest for like a better villain than this. And Michael Keaton is so damn good. Again, as you said, he doesn't have a lot to do, but when he's on screen, he's just a magnetic presence who they've actually built up to be a sympathetic villain who, even if you don't want them to achieve their goals, you still sympathise with them.
Yeah.
That scene in the car is so damn good. Probably the best. Well, it was the best up until Black Panther villain solo moment. I would reckon. I think Loki is better overall, but I think that one scene with Keaton in the car, like him figuring out and then confronting Peter, it is probably the best single scene of villain acting in any of these movies.
Yeah, for sure. The third act, I think there's no drop-off whatsoever for the general pace. I think this movie is pretty consistent throughout. I personally don't think there are any sort of lengthy periods that feel boring or unnecessary or that bog it down.
I definitely found in this movie that the first act dragged for me a little bit.
Okay.
When rewatching, just in terms of, I really liked the first scene with Michael Keaton, and then it kind of went from Peter doing the home video to Peter going to out on patrol and stuff like that. And I didn't feel it settled into its rhythms until it went to high school. And like once it was in high school properly and doing like stuff there, I was like all in again. But it just took me a little bit longer this time to get fully into the pace of the movie.
I feel they kind of had to pay their service to that kind of thing. But as I said, the backbone of this movie and their hopes of this being a continually good sub-franchise with those kids are with this high school vibe they've built. They've got a nice faculty, and I'm sure they will cast even more fun people to play teachers going forward. So outstanding performances. We have 3 spare, I believe, heading into this, because we have Robert Downey Jr., Sam Rockwell, Hayley Atwell, Tom Hiddleston, Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, Ben Kingsley, Chris Evans, Samuel L. Jackson, the entire Guardians of the Galaxy team, Michael Pena, and Michael Rooker so far. For me, Tom Holland has to get something just because of how utterly he nails both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. In some ways it's understated. I just think it's so incredibly solid for a guy that young to be able to be the star of this movie. Because, I mean, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield both had some name value before they were cast. And obviously it boosted it. But Tom Holland is obviously... It's not like he's been in nothing, but it's a pretty big role to take on at his age, and I think he doesn't at all get lost in it, and I think he plays every part of this well.
Yeah, I mean, like what he came off. He was Billy Elliot in the musical in the West End. He had The Impossible, In the Heart of the Sea, and Wolf Hall, and then he's this. For someone to settle into a role as a lead in one of these movies as quickly as he has is like pretty astounding. And for someone to be as perfectly suited to this character, especially when you think about him doing the accent, like he is British, he is doing this accent, which I'm not saying that it's hard to do an American accent, but I'm saying that there are some actors who cannot do an accent and act well at the same time, and he is doing that with spades.
I think his accent's better than Benedict Cumberbatch's, or at least his manner of speech is more authentic. And the daunting task of going up against a large portion of people like that Tobey Maguire performance. I know I'm in the minority that don't love it. I kind of liked what Andrew Garfield was doing, but, you know, to be the third Spider-Man in just over a decade was a big task, and I think he leapt that hurdle. He did a backflip over the hurdle for realsies with no stuntman.
Because he's doing that thing that we've not really seen properly before, which is high school Peter, and completely nailing it. Like, he's also the first one to, I feel, properly nail both parts.
Yeah.
Which is the important part, is he is Spider-Man and he is Peter Parker. He doesn't excel at one or the other. He is capable of doing both.
I believe him. I think that's the biggest thing I can say, is that I fully believe him as this iconic character.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I would also say that we should use one of our 3 spares on Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes.
100%. Like, again, like we don't get to this point where we've given people like Ben Kingsley and Sam Rockwell best performance features for their villain roles and then not give it to Keaton, who, like, we've given Loki 2 so far. Michael Keaton has only been in one movie, but he is completely blown pretty much every villain in the past. I mean, Avengers was the 6th movie in this franchise. Yeah. So in 10 movies' time, we haven't had anyone in comparison to this. So, this needs it. Like, Tom Holland for completely redefining this character in a tricky ability, like in the fact that he's the third one that is tarred, but Michael Keaton gets to come in and take like what is probably a C-list villain and then make him compelling and interesting, and I want more of him, and I don't want him to get in the way of another villain, but like an issue with Spider-Man movies is they stack and stack and stack and stack the villains, and sometimes it feels like you've got too much going on. This is the first movie where it felt like all the villains got the right amount of stuff to do, and they actually managed to keep so much meat for Michael Keaton to chew on, even whilst realising that this is Tom Holland's movie to do what he wants with. This isn't a two-hander in the same way that something like Civil War is, but this movie is not as good if Tom Holland or Michael Keaton aren't in it. The best thing you can say about what these performance awards are supposed to be is they're supposed to be people who, if you remove the characters, completely change the DNA of the movie that they're in. Yeah.
Special shout out, but not actual nomination, to Zendaya, I think, just because of what a dramatic turnaround from what she's known for. The look of it as well, of that character, I think is great, and I think she's setting herself up to be quite a star, and I look forward to what she does next time, but I will not be saying let's give her a nominee. I think your point stands about that character. That leaves us with 2 spare heading forward. Our next episode will be on Thor Ragnarok. I think it's very clear who's going to get that one. And then it will be Black Panther. We also have a crossover episode coming with the Superhero Pantheon, another comic book movie podcast hosted by Jerome Cusson, who is a friend of the real world. So it'll be me, Ben, Jerome, and his co-host Brian, all on one. We will be previewing Infinity War. You can check that out coming soon. Go to entertherealworld.com to E's Real World. Check all that out. This has been fun, I think. Again, apologies for my gushing about Spider-Man, but I'm just elated that I finally got the Spider-Man movie that I think we all deserve.
This has maybe gone from being what was going to be 20 minutes of my thoughts to being potentially our longest episode ever.
Yeah, and most of it mine instead of yours. Sorry.
It's fine. You are the Spider-Man. Like, when we do our Marvel rankings at the end of this, I mean, we've already compared our draft lists before we watched Thor Ragnarok, and you have got Spider-Man Homecoming quite a few spaces above me on that list.
Yeah, I feel I haven't actually let you say why you don't think it is that high, really.
No, I just think it's a good, fun movie that I think has... I don't think it's harmed by having less stakes, but I do think it's one of those ones where I put it firmly in the similar level to like Iron Man and Captain America, where it's a really solid first outing for a character that doesn't need to transcend anything and doesn't transcend anything. Like, yeah, this is an 8 out of 10 movie that fixes what's been wrong with the last 3 Spider-Man movies and makes it all better and incorporates it into a universe and builds a lot of stuff. And I can't wait to see where the second movie in this franchise goes, because I think it's going to be even better than this one.
I think that's been a common theme of a lot of the ones recently, where even if something is imperfect, I think they've been setting up a lot of very good foundations lately, with Ant-Man, with Doctor Strange, with this. They are future-proofing themselves for if they start killing off some of these OG characters in Infinity War. We'll see what happens there. But this has been Spider-Man. This might be one of our longest episodes. My bad. Everyone blame me and my Spider-Man crush. So yeah, next time, one of my other crushes, Chris Hemsworth returns as Thor in Thor Ragnarok. I'm excited to do that one. Again, haven't seen that since I saw it in the cinema, so happy.
Me either.
Yeah. There you go. Well, we're off to watch Thor Ragnarok. That's not true. But see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Hey!